Tonight, we're going to talk about personalized nutrition, personalized solutions for you and your health, personalized solutions for your family. It's exciting for me because the idea of genomic analysis, the idea of personalizing supplementation, weight management, and lifestyle, sleep and stress solutions for individual, helping an individual understand there is no cookie or no cookbook answer to their concerns. The answer is in their genetic blueprint, and that there are so many things that we can do to lean into our genes and really support healthy metabolic function. So I want to share with you some things I've learned about personal nutrition, personal genomics, and what you can do to support your health. It's a fun place to be because when we think about personalized genomics, I know that I spent years reading and looking and learning. And for me, that was so much fun because I found it just how unique we were as individuals, just how unique we were in finding a solution for ourselves. And it's in fact that uniqueness that makes us us that is the solution to your longevity. It is the solution to your factors. It is what I want you to pay attention to that's going to make all the difference in the world for your personalized nutrition. The idea here is to ask yourself, what are the things that I could be doing? How can I prioritize my health factors? Instead of thinking that is that cookbook that I referred to as one size fits all, that kind of medicine is done. We are now able to do a deep dive into a person's genes to identify how they will respond to certain nutrients, the combination of nutrients. How do they metabolize the world around them? Is one of the health factors that they need to pay attention to sleep? And is that more important than fitness? Is that more important than the foods that they're eating? Personalized nutrition tells us that. And so it is my pleasure to be with you tonight. I am the Director of Nutrimetrics and Clinical Education for Market America and the Professional Division Nutrimetrics Custom Health Solutions. I am also the Clinical Director for a nonprofit, the NEI. We offer CME credits to physicians and allied health professionals. It is my pleasure to talk to you about personalized genomics. To do that, we've got to ask, what is genomics and what is nutrigenomics? Well, let's start here. The human genome is 99.9% identical. Only 0.1% of our genetic variations are responsible for disease, responsible for these very small changes in an individual. It's a small number of genes with varied function that have a disproportionate, when you consider the percentage here, a disproportionate impact on health. And that's why I say there is no such thing as one size fits all. There is no longer a strategy in medicine of everybody gets the same solution. I just like to look at this as that I am 99.9% identical to an Olympic athlete and only 0.1% identical to a serial killer. That's the way I like to look at it, but you figure out your own math, right? The idea here is that nutrigenomics is just a branch of genetics. It focuses on identifying and understanding interactions between nutrients that we're getting or we're not, and our individual gene sequence. I frequently refer to that gene sequence as our genetic blueprint. It's your book. It's your gene story. Nutrigenomics just simply studies these gene variations. They're often referred to as single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, SNP. These SNPs are individual variations. They make you, you, and me. But it is in fact this 0.1% that has a disproportionate impact on disease. Now, the reason why nutrigenomics is evolving is because we want to know how genes behave in relation to a gene environment. What triggers a gene to turn on or triggers a gene to turn off? Because not everybody that has a certain gene is going to display abnormal cellular behavior or the flip side, optimal cellular behavior, depending on their genetic story or their genetic blueprint. So the idea of studying the genomics, studying that environment, was to understand more about a nutrient's absorption, a nutrient's delivery requirements, a nutrient's metabolism, including the combination and form of nutrient metabolism, how nutrients are ultimately utilized or eliminated, and their action on the body. Now, what nutrigenomics cannot tell you is if you need 200 milligrams or 250 milligrams. But nutrigenomics can tell you if you have an enzyme that is sluggish, requiring you to saturate with a certain vitamin. Or more importantly, you have an enzyme that doesn't function well, and so you need a certain form of a nutrient. Or that there is a polygenetic situation where there are multiple genes that interact. That is that gene environment. And you may need a combination of nutrients to be able to help a gene or a cluster of genes behave optimally. And that's what we call personalized nutrition. It's personalized dietary advice. And what we know today is that individuals that receive personal dietary advice through nutrigenomic analysis tend to move their eating habits in a correct pattern. Having that test, don't guess solution empowers the individual to make lifestyle choices because they see it on paper. They say, this is worthwhile, and I feel like I could be more adherent to this. So when we think about recommendations, we want to make sure that those recommendations are coming from somewhere and that they're going to be meaningful. And that's why nutrigenomic analysis is so powerful, because it's these SNPs or these variations that can give us a look underneath the microscope at our susceptibility to disease. Now, having a particular gene polymorphism does not mean that you have a disease, but it does mean that you have a gene that is linked to a certain cellular metabolism, enzyme function, or disease pattern. And for that reason, now knowing the hand that you were dealt, you can make decisions about nutrients and lifestyle habits that can turn bad genes down and turn optimal genes up. Ultimately, these genes or these variations, when they are paired with the proper nutrients or combination of nutrients, can help our body defend itself, whether it's due to immune issues, stress-related issues, or metabolic decline. Ultimately, the way our body responds is based on our genetic blueprint and the environment or the playground that we gave those genes. And this is why today we are able to show so much evidence that genes, that nutrients, that sleep and stress habits, as well as exercise habits, play a very large role in how your genes behave. Now, sometimes people will say, show me the proof, right? Well, you already know a little bit about genetics. If you've ever met someone that is lactose intolerant, that's a genetic issue, right? There is a gene for that lactose intolerance. If you've ever heard of scurvy, this is where sailors went out. This is one of the classic nutritional deficiencies where sailors went out on the water and they didn't have any vitamin C and they started dying. Their gums started bleeding. Those that survived had a very unique genetic polymorphism that allowed them to survive. Have you ever met someone that can drink alcohol and another person that they're just what we refer to as a lightweight? They smell beer and they're like, whoa, it's way too much for me. That's a genetic polymorphism, how you metabolize a nutrient, right? How you ultimately detox from a nutrient, how your body responds under stress or duress, right? Those are all that's all in your genetic makeup. So it's easy, as I said, to say, where's the proof? What makes it difficult is that these correlations are trying to be made without looking at the entire genetic blueprint. So it's very difficult because multiple genes interacting with each other kind of blur the impact. It's never going to be as simple as just avoiding dairy products. Perhaps you have some other gene polymorphisms related to gut immunity. And for that reason, not only do you need to avoid dairy products, you are also genetically predisposed to having a poor gut barrier. And it means that other allergens or other insults to the gut also need to be paid attention to. And that's what we refer to as a polygenic picture. It's what I will often refer to as the gene environment, or I will call a gene cluster. Certain genes start to cluster together, and they are networked, often connected by certain nutrients, which is the power behind personalized nutrition. Because when you know the data points or the gene polymorphisms, and there's a connection with a nutrient or a lifestyle factor like sleep, now we're able to prioritize your program. We're able to prioritize for you. Now, you may want to know this, that there is such a thing as a functional SNP and a non-functional SNP. Functional SNPs have a direct link to a certain activity, cellular activity in the body, or the way a cell will behave. A potential function of that gene. Well, what a functional SNP also means is that there's a great deal of scientific strength and agreement on what that gene does. Non-functional SNPs are sometimes referred to as go nowhere SNPs. They look important because they're close to a functional SNP. They have a strong relationship to a functional SNP. However, there's no data and no strength showing that influencing that gene was intimately connected to the network of other genes that we pay attention to. So by understanding the gene network, the gene cluster through nutrigenomic analysis, we can adjust gene signals so that we can do something about supporting healthy aging, cardiovascular, and metabolic well-being. Work with individuals to identify if we need to prioritize bone mineral density concerns as they age through exercise or through nutrient or through hormone balancing. At the end of the day, personalized nutrition helps the practitioner and the patient prioritize. In fact, it is a better understanding of how diet and genes interact that enable us as individuals or practitioners to help manage health factors, possibly prevent or mitigate, even delay the onset or severity of a chronic health concern or health complaint. And that is personalized nutrition. It's data points that you didn't have before. They give you some context over vitamin D labs or lipid labs or thyroid or other hormone labs. See, often individuals will be in a normal range or underneath a normal bell curve, but they'll still feel poor. Perhaps the answer is in your gene polymorphisms or your genetic blueprint. Often we'll want to make sure that we're seeing a change or a shift in an individual's response to their environment or to a familial link to disease. And we'll want to know that we're making the right choices or that we are prioritizing and not using a one-size-fits-all approach. Nutrigenomics allows us to do that. But what gene polymorphism testing is not is a diagnostic test. It does not diagnose anything. It tells you, and like I said, gives you more data points to evaluate and contextualize your health and your health factors. It's not a prescription, and it's definitely not all that you need or that a practitioner needs to identify individual health or risk factors. It is 48 new data points to evaluate where do we want to apply our pressure? Where do we want to apply nutrition, lifestyle, sleep, stress, and fitness? And that's why I want to talk to you about the 5 principles of a healthy gene environment. First, understand there is no one superstar gene. That's why we focus on gene environment or the way genes interact with each other. We don't try to fix a gene. Second, there are 3 gene pathways for everybody. You either have the optimal form of the gene, which means you have proper cellular metabolism, enzyme function. You have an alternative form of the gene, which means it may be neutral. It may be a sluggish enzyme, but it's a fully functional enzyme. Maybe it needs a little bit of a bump or a little bit of a lift from a nutrient or a lifestyle factor like sleep. But when all is said and done, it is not one that will lead to problematic or problems or disease unless you apply a lot of pressure to it. And what I mean by that is an alternative form of the gene can behave as well as a good form of the gene as long as you feed it well, as long as you let it get some rest, as long as you don't stress it out. But if you live a life that is very stressful, if you eat a lot of sugar, if you don't feed that gene or that gene environment properly, then alternative forms of genes can start to become deleterious. You can move the needle the wrong direction and towards the arrested or low or non-functioning form of the gene. And then there is that third aspect. Some people do in fact have an arrested form of the gene or a low or non-functioning form of the gene. And it's in these individuals that nutrigenomics has really been helpful, because now we're able to look at that gene, and because of nutrigenomic analysis, because of nutrigenomic research, we're able to see how that gene interacts with nutrients or external stressors like oxidative stress or environmental stressors, as well as mental, emotional, or hormonal hormesis or stressors. And now that we know how that gene behaves, we're able to find a direct pathway to make a change with that gene. Now we know what nutrients it needs. Now we know what combination of nutrients it might need. We'll know if it responds better to stress or better to stress management or better to B vitamins. And so it's important to know that there's something you can do about arrested genes. Principle number 3, gene environment is influenced by more than nutrients. This is not just about supplementation. In fact, it's a lot about fitness. It's a lot about stress management. It's a lot about quality of sleep. And then it's about targeted nutrition. People often attack their genes the wrong way. They want the easy button. And I'm with you on that. I understand. You just want to know, what do I take to make my genes behave optimally? It's not how it works. You do have to pay attention to how your genes behave. And many genes are responsive to a healthy sleep cycle. They're responsive to fitness as a trigger for their gene activity. Your muscles are very powerful, and they send out chemical signals that tell your blood sugar to stay within healthy ranges, and that is genetically linked, to tell your blood pressure to stay or your heart rate to stay in healthy ranges, and there's a genetic link there. In fact, your muscles are sending out signals that can combat those that are coming from your fat cells. Fitness is one of the more important things that you can do because it has a very profound impact on your hormones. So does sleep, and so does stress management. Have a huge impact on your hormones, and they're running around being the chemical messengers. So we're going to start with changing those risk factors or those quality of life factors. And for many people that don't get a good night's sleep, there's supplementation for that. For individuals that have trouble with their stress habits, there's supplementation for that. In the case of nutrigenomic analysis, we know which ones to recommend for you. It's important that you know the fourth principle, which is there is no such thing as one size fits all. The gene variations, while they do have common gene pathways, optimal, alternative, or arrested, it's in fact this idea of epistasis, where an individual could have a very similar, in a family, have a very similar gene makeup, but would respond very differently because of the external stressors that are applied, like extra weight or too much stress or not enough sleep or poor dietary or supplement choices. At the end of the day, we just pay attention to the fifth principle, which is combination is key. There is no one trigger for chronic disease. Therefore, your approach to well-being needs to be just as diverse as the number of ways that you may get sick. And that's why we created nutrigenomics research, so that you would understand more about your personalized blueprint. SNPs or polymorphisms can reveal insight to how to eat based on your genes, how to exercise based on your genes, what supplements do you need based on your genes. The idea here is a personalized dietary and exercise program based on your genetic blueprint, because sometimes we feel like one of these avatars. We feel like we're being pulled in all directions. We just do not get a good night's sleep. We feel We show happy on the outside, but we do not feel good on the inside. The answer is in your genetic blueprint. And that's why we created nutritional bundles. That's why we created solutions for gene polymorphisms so that you would be able to bundle certain nutrients based on the way genes cluster. But there is a foundation. There's a first step that everyone takes. This is creating an optimal gene environment by creating a healthy or proper foundation. And the way you do that is treat the gut. The road to health is paved with good intestines. Healing your gut with things like fiber, things like astaxanthin, things like curcumin. They've been shown to be very beneficial in healing a gut and supporting healthy gut genetic SNPs. Even without knowing your genetic polymorphisms, what we find is that when we work with the gut, we tend to send signals out that help other genes behave better. Your immune system and your stress response are found in your gut, making it one of the more powerful foundational places you could start to heal, whether you've done personalized genomics or not. The next is to look at stress management. Stress management, something that we call a balance bundle. These are things like magnesium. These are things like omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins, adaptogens. Adaptogens are botanicals that help us bob and weave. We can look at what's called a foundation bundle. These are things like omega-3 fatty acids, an antioxidant like OPC3 or curcumin, magnesium and B vitamins, minerals, something simple like a multivitamin. These are the ways that we create a healthy vitamin or a healthy gene environment. Then if you still want to do genomic testing because you've got some big questions about weight and hormones and sleep, then it's appropriate. But I want you to know that paying attention to the gut, paying attention to stress, and paying attention to the foundation through a multivitamin is one of the ways to cover most of the genes and make sure that they're all behaving well. I like to focus on the gut because bad bacteria are bad actors and they have an impact on your immune system. They have an enormous impact on how genes behave and on chronic health concerns. One of the places where we see the biggest impact in genes turning up or turning down is based on the health of the microbiota. So you want to make sure that you have good microbiota. That may be by taking a fiber supplement. It's definitely by eating a healthy diet. You may want to supplement with antioxidants like curcumin and refeed the gut with things like probiotics. But that's why we focus on the gut first, because it has trillions of cells in the gut biota that are paying attention, and they're sending out signals throughout the entire body. So they're going to be our little army. What do you think, though, the number one question that people ask when they want to do nutrigenomic analysis? They want to know if there's a specialized diet that they can follow. Most individuals that seek out personalized genomics want to know, what supplements do I need to take and do I need to eat a particular way? They want to know if they were built for keto, for paleo, is intermittent fasting going to work for them? Would they be better to be vegan or plant-based, right? Well, here's the blessing. All of these are low glycemic. All of these can be found in the tenets of low glycemic impact eating. That's why we want you to link your genomic approach, your nutritional approach, to a healthy lifestyle approach like TLS weight management. The idea here is to focus on getting foods in their natural state. And what genomic analysis can help you find out is in what combination or in what composition do you need to be taking this? Do you need a little bit higher fat, a little bit lower fat? Do you have farmer genes where you can have more grains? Or do you have paleo genes where you're going to focus on other low glycemic impact eating meal plans like fat shredder or rapid results? The idea here is that the answer is in your genetic blueprint, but that the solution is in TLS weight loss solution. What do you think the number one hormone disruptor is? If we're going to focus on what kind of specialized diet do I need to eat, right? We also need to focus on, if I'm going to make a change in the way my genes behave, and you say that hormones are so powerful, what do you think the number one hormone disruptor is? The lack of a good night's sleep. And this is why in my 5 principles of personalized nutrition, you need to make sure that you're sleeping well to help your genes behave. It's about healing the gut. It's about eating to your genetic blueprint, which you can do through a lifestyle program, and making sure that you get a good night's sleep. Because when you don't, you will have elevated inches or centimeters around your middle. You'll have a reduction in sex hormones, as well as the ability to keep blood sugars and insulin within healthy ranges. Your hunger hormones will go up, and your satiety hormones and your better sleep hormones will go down. Not only will you start to see this emotionally, you will definitely start to see a lack of sleep physically. Now, whether or not sleep needs to be your primary target, the answer is in your genetic blueprint. If you need to be eating a certain lifestyle, the answer is in your genetic blueprint. If the gut guard is your solution, or you really need to be focusing on just the basics with a multivitamin and an omega and an antioxidant, the answer is in your blueprint. What I want you to know is that your genes are talking to each other. And that's why gene environment is so important. That's why I don't want anyone to focus on one supplement, but rather on their bigger picture of well-being. I want us to pay attention to personalized nutrition based on the fact that a gene environment can be created by getting a good night's sleep. And if you have a hard time doing that, there are supplements that can help. Managing your stress. If you don't do that on your own, there's always an answer in supplementation as you move in the right direction. There's probably no better place to talk about that than in changing your diet. The power of TLS behind or linked to genomic analysis makes it possible for you to reach your best potential. What I want you to know is that the goal is not to fix a gene. There is no supervillain or superhero gene. While many of us will want to know if we have a certain gene, at the end of the day, we work on a system, not on a particular SNP. And gene environment, by a healthy night's sleep, managing stress, and getting good nutrients, is more powerful than any one SNP ever could be. The value of genomic analysis for you is the idea of being adherent to a lifestyle that is right for you, moving you towards a better lifestyle change, helping you understand that what is significant can also be simple. For that reason, with all of that, I want to thank you for spending Sunday night with me. It's very fun to talk about nutrigenomics, help answer questions about nutrigenomics, and working with you to focus on what it is that you can do to be your very best you. What will you do today to reach your highest potential?